Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky all up in your podcast, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for pressing play. Just as usual, very excited about my guest and topic for this episode. Returning to the show, who's by this time is no stranger to the show. I think it may be your third time, maybe even fourth. I'm not sure. But we've got Bill Barsh, the head honcho, the grand poobah of Pacesetter, games and simulations. And we're going to be talking about, really, I think it's a really big game. It doesn't get talked about as much these days as I think it deserves for its place in both wargaming and gaming and, I don't know, just geek history. But we're going to be talking about Starfleet battles. And Bill, I was pleased to learn at the last North Texas RPG Con, is well versed. He has earned his captain's stripes and his chair in Starfleet battles, which is a tactical war game using some of the Star Trek IP, but not all of it. And we'll get more into that here in a little bit. But you are, Bill, like I said, you're the head guy. I know you got thousands of employees, factories everywhere. You're always in the middle of something. What's going on with Pacesetter games and simulations these days?
Well, Shane, first of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to be back on. I enjoy this show. It's a great format. So Pacesetter, we'll step away from Starfleet battles for a second because we don't really do anything with SFB. But so we have a new D&D Kickstarter coming up in January. It is our second Endless Encounters book. Our first one was Endless Encounter Dungeons. One of the largest Kickstarters, probably I think the biggest Kickstarter we've ever done. And it's also our, between that and Into the Unknown, it's one of our, it's one or two as far as our biggest selling product. People love the book. So we are doing a wilderness version. So we have about 5 of them planned. So this one's forests and jungles. So it's basically a encounter generator for forests and jungle environments. And it's scaled by level. There's going to be a ton of new magic items, a ton of new monsters in it. Some sample adventures, that kind of thing. It's Endless Encounters Dungeons is extremely popular. We bring them to every convention, and if we don't sell out of them, we come close. So right. It still does really well. We're also going to be I got to promote the Philadelphia Area Game Exposition, I believe it's called PAGE, P-A-G-E.
Yep.
Being held in Philadelphia. I think it's the first weekend actually of January. I want to say the 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. I should know the dates. Here I am trying to promote it, and I don't know the exact dates.
I'll look it up for you.
It's roughly right there. I can break the fourth wall and look at my phone and get the actual dates because I'm terrible at these things. I was right. It's the 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Well, see, there you go.
Whatever I said, I'm going to say I was right.
Yeah.
So it's the first convention ever that they're doing. We're really excited to be there. I've been slotted as a special guest. My son Ben is. There's going to be cool. Greg Gillespie's going to be there. Frank Mentzer's going to be there, which has got to be one of the first USA conventions he's been at in quite some time.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's several other people. So, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it looks to be great. The venue looks awesome. Right. We're really excited about going to that and hopefully kicking that convention off. To a great start and hopefully around for years to come.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So that's the big things at Pacesetter right now. So we've got way too many irons in the fire that I'm not going to bore everyone with right now. So
yeah, well, and a lot of people may or may not. You could actually see behind me. That's your BX game right there.
Oh, I do see it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pointing at that blue. One of the things Pacesetter does is a, I don't know if retro clone. I don't really.
It kind of is.
It's an
homage piece, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty, I really think it's a pretty accurate clone of BX, but we did a lot of expansion in it, and right. I think when we did that box set, the premise was, first of all, we wanted to do a BX a version of BX that had a player's guide and a dungeon master's guide or game master's guide. We can't call it dungeon master's guide, but it's two separate books, and it's just separate the rules that way. And that was why we did it. We weren't that honestly. I can tell everyone out there in gaming world, I am not always that plugged into everything going on in gaming, and I had honestly very little knowledge of. At the time was BX Essentials. We did that. I think that 2016, no, 18, 16, 17. It's been out for a while. So it was the first of its kind, and then OSE blew up and, that kind of dominates the BX space. But we're actually expanding it coming up this year. We're doing a lot of work with the Holmes estate, which we did a big product for last year. And we are doing a rule set with using the Holmes system. Nice. And we're kind of combining BX. We're really going to add some BECME stuff and probably real quickly, honestly, all basic 5 versions of basic D&D. We are going to do a composite rule system, same kind of format, player's guide, dungeon master's guide.
You're talking about BECME?
Yeah. So it won't be a BECME exclusive clone. It's going to be basically all the basic systems. They're also some, oh my gosh, they all use the same to hit charts. They don't differ. A lot of things, they don't differ at all. It's minor stuff. So we're going to kind of, we're kind of picking and choosing the best of all of them, and keeping with that clean, simple concept, right? And we're going to put that out next year, especially because we have a lot more home stuff coming down the pike. So cool. That we got from the Holmes estate. So that's a very large project, and we're really excited by it. We did a beta release kind of those rules already, but we're doing a very large expansion of it, and got a lot of good feedback from people. So we're excited about that. But thank you for buying that. Thanks for picking that up. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, man. Now I got stuff. I've got a lot of y'all's stuff. I've also got the. You'll recognize this.
Oh, Embattled Trek. There it is. Yeah. We reprinted the Embattled Trek.
So
one of the things we have is we have all the IP from the rights to produce material for all the We Warriors.
Right.
Back in the day.
Well, there's what I have on my and folks, Starfleet Battles is coming. We have gone from.
We're gonna get there.
We're at yellow alert and red alert is imminent. Talking about We Warriors and all that. I have on my list of episodes I want to get to. It says Bill Barsh, and it talks about that you have the rights to publish the first adventure module ever for. Didn't that come out through We Warriors? And
it did. Palace of the Vampire Queen.
Right. So one of these days because I think that's a really important piece of history.
You know what? Absolutely, let's do it because we have a big announcement coming up later this year with Palace of the Vampire.
Okay. We'll reach out.
We've been working on it for years. We're going to put out something that's going to do her justice, especially with the 50th anniversary of D&D. It's something that needs to happen. It is, like you said, it is the first D&D adventure ever commercially produced. They did it before TSR ever put it. TSR didn't think adventure modules would sell. That's why they didn't do them.
Right. Yeah. But then they, ended up being, they sold like hotcakes. But anyway.
Oh yeah. Let's get on to Starfleet.
That's what I said. I was saying the tactical officer is waving me down, and we are going to red alert. There's Klingons off the starboard bow. So let's talk about Starfleet Battles, which, I'm going to give this game has always been it's weird. I have not played a lot of Starfleet Battles. I've played some, but it's always had a big impact on me. Like every time I think of Starfleet Battles, I have fuzzy warm feelings, and it's big for me. And I'll kind of explain a little bit of why. Like I can remember. And Starfleet Battles was a game, we'll get more into this, but it came out in 1979. It's a tactical war game using basically ships from Star Trek. And then some stuff that they just said, hey, this sounds cool, and they made it up, and it's part of their Star Trek universe. In fact, they call it the Starfleet universe. It's separate from the main Star Trek canon or whatever. We'll get more in a little bit of that. But I can remember this would have probably been 82 or 83, maybe 84. And I was at the youth center, the rec center or whatever on Little Rock Air Force Base. I'm 10, 11, 12 maybe. And there's these airmen, who were using the game room or whatever to play Starfleet battles. And I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, I was absolutely like, the artwork on the box grabbed me.
Oh, yeah.
Watching all I was just, and they have, you have those little stylized ships with the damage locations and all that stuff. And of course, at 11 or 12, I mean, these guys might have been 19, but when you're that young, these guys were like, they were walking the halls of Valhalla as far as I was concerned, and they were playing this super cool game. And I was a gamer at the time. Like, I liked to play D&D and other games and board game, but I'd never seen anything like this. The closest thing I'd probably ever seen was like at the library, they had like Avalon Hill wargames, which were at that age, those were too esoteric for me. Like, I liked looking at the pieces, but I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. But when they took a war game, and this is a very tactically rich war game, and you dropped a Star Trek IP on top of it, I was hooked, man. So it made this huge impression on me. And then, over the years, like I would play a little bit, or I'd see some friends playing it. Every time, I remember I bought it again in the early 90s. I picked it up and looked through it. And I don't know, and I've played it here and there, but it's just always rented this huge nostalgia shelf in me rent free. I mean, I just love this game. And like I said, I have nowhere near the level of expertise that like you have with it, or, a lot of the people that showed up when you ran it. And I'll set the stage here. The reason you're on here talking with me about it, I had talked to about a year ago. I was like, I might run Starfleet battles in a very limited capacity at North Texas RPG Con, because there's a BattleTech track and there's a few other war games, and I thought it might be a good fit. And I'd be like, that'd give me a chance to learn a little bit more about Starfleet battles, and maybe some other people. Well, I'm really glad that you ended up saying, hey, I'm going to run like a welcome to Starfleet battles kind of evening and introduce people to it. And all these people showed up. I mean, there were like experts and veterans. And I mean, there was a lot of interest in it. But you obviously knew your stuff. I mean, and I was like, I'm so glad Bill ended up doing this, because I would have been a disaster if I tried to introduce people to Starfleet battles. I might have pulled it off if I used that little free cadet. I might have pulled that off if I would have just stuck to that. But having said that, and I know you said you're not going to do it just because of the time it takes and but I would love to get a Starfleet battles track going at NTX. I think it'd be
great.
I think it'd be great. So if you're listening out there and you go to North Texas RPG Con, let us know. And you want to play?
I'd be willing to support it any way I could. I mean, this, for me, it was definitely a one and done, because I'm just so busy doing other stuff, but I wanted to do it because I'm just like you. I have this this space in my head that will always be, Starfleet battles.
Right.
We played the game. I mean, my gaming group goes way back, and we bought the pocket game version of it.
The very first, are you talking about like the very first task that was a Task Force games?
Task Force games number 4, actually.
Right.
So my gaming group back then we were mostly a war game group originally, and we got into RPGs. But so I think it must have been at Michicon 79. We picked up the pocket game because Task Force Games was at the convention. I was with MDG who ran those conventions. So, I fortunately got to meet a lot of people and know a lot of people, but I picked up the game, and one of my friends picked it up too. We both looked at it and said, "Oh, this looks just fantastic, right?" And we weren't even Trekkies. I mean, I'm not a Trekkie in any way, shape, or form. But it looked cool. I love small games that you could play quickly. My group loved doing that. We picked it up. We played it right there and then the day we bought it. We opened the pocket game up, played it.
So did that version have like the energy allocation and the phases? I mean, was that so? It was
everything the normal game has. It was a little more restrictive. I think I want to say plotted movement was, before I know I'm going to get way into the weeds, but I think plotted movement was the standard back in the digest version. And then they had an option you could use not plotted movement. We did not like plotted. We used plotted movement once and we were like, no. Yes, it's energy allocation form, 32 or the impulse chart for 32. Speed 32 was in there. The SSDs for the core races, Fed. I should remember all this, but Fed, Kazini, Klingon,
Gorn.
Tholian, Romulan.
Oh, I guess
Gorn.
Gorn was Gorn.
Gorn was in there.
Yeah.
The Gorn, the Romulan, and the Tholian, I think only each have one ship. Tholian had like a patrol cruiser, but
now are the Kzinti the kind of cat creatures?
yeah, they're
Okay.
There's two of them. There's Kzintis and Lyrans. The Kzintis were from the animated series,
right?
A little even backtracking a little more. So Task Force Games got the rights to produce Starfleet battles, and they could use anything from the original series, and I think they could use almost anything from the animated series or everything. My memory of that's a little foggy, but I know they could use the animated series. I just could remember if it was everything. There were some exceptions, but so before the people who are Trekkies get really, really excited here, this is not a Star Trek game. I hate to break it to you all. It's called Starfleet Battles. This is not a Star Trek game. The only reason they use that IP is so the ships have class names, they have races and description. You know, a Federation heavy cruiser looks like the Enterprise, okay? But other than that, there is zero Star Trek in this game.
They're not allowed to use character names.
No, they can't use any of that kind of IP,
right.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't belong in the game because, like I said, it's a tactical.
It's a tactical
ship to ship tactical war game, and it is a little trivia note. It is the longest running produced, meaning that was in production war game, I believe, in the history of war games. So no other war game has been in constant production as long as Starfleet Battles.
What you mean? The campaign for Northern Africa hasn't been in?
Don't think they print it anymore. So, but yeah, so a lot of the old Avalon Hill stuff, like a lot of where Jutland was around forever. You know, Gettysburg. I mean, there were some that were around for a long time, but I think Starfleet Battles has passed them all. I mean, it's been around since 1979. I mean, we're talking.
So why do you think that is? Is it because of the Star Trek IP attached to it, or is it?
I don't. It has
good. I mean,
it has a. People get hooked on this game. It is an addictive game, and you know, I know some people are one and done with it, but people who legitimately play it, they want to keep playing it. Kind of what you were talking about. They fall in love with this game, and it really is a great game. It can be incredibly complicated, but yet incredibly simple at the same time, and it never ever plays the same twice. I mean, just never.
Not only the randomness of the dice for one.
Absolutely, but and people just the tactical elements of the game. There's so much variety built into it now, and I'm way behind on it. I am probably 10 years out of date on Starfleet Battles. I can tell you everything up till probably the mid 90s, verbatim, and a lot of that comes because I was with Task Force Games. I started with them in '82. Doing some editing work, but I didn't do anything.
Oh, so you were actually with?
I was with Task Force, but I didn't do a lot with Starfleet Battles because Amarillo Design Bureau, which was a kind of they're not really a subsidiary of Task Force, but they kind of were. They did everything Starfleet Battles. So Task Force Games printed it and sold it, but everything came out of ADB.
Amarillo, which was is it Steve Cole? Steve Cole, yeah. Steve
Cole and Alan Eldridge formed Task Force Games in '78, I think. But Steve Cole pretty much separated and just stuck with everything Starfleet Battles while Task Force was still producing other stuff. I mean, they produced 17 or 18 pocket games, I think, by the end of the day. Some various board games. Prime Directive, which is a Starfleet Battles role-playing game.
But they also did, it seems like the other game they had that was...
Well, Starfire was another one.
Starfire seems to be the one that...
It's very similar to Starfleet Battles, but smaller scale, I guess. That's the way to say it. Very popular. We had 3 versions of that. So I was kind of in the editing side of the pocket games is what I mostly did. Now, I still wrote a lot of stuff for Starfleet Battles. I did a lot of scenarios for them.
I didn't even know all this.
I'm in a ton of their books. I did a bunch of scenarios that were... And a lot of them aren't necessarily credited because when we were in-house, we would just credit it with
the staff or whatever. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've got scenarios in scenario book 1 and 2, got a lot of captain's logs. I did a lot of stuff, and I know Captain's Log is like 7 through 15 or 18 in there.
Right.
Nexus magazine,
Right. Which
stuff
is
like that.
the
So
quote unquote in-house organ. That's how
yeah,
they would.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Nexus was Task Forces magazine. It only went 18
Yeah.
issues though.
It was their
But
dragon. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so I did do a lot of. I was like a bipolar person at Task Force. I was a minor editor who dealt with pocket games, but in my quote unquote free time, I wrote a bunch of stuff for Starfleet Battles.
That is, see, I didn't even know that, man. That's too. Okay. So how did you end up working at Task Force Games?
I wrote a bunch of stuff in because I loved their products, and they wound up saying, "Hey, are you interested in doing some work?" They had a lot of kind of like semi-freelance guys like me. It was a different era in the
Were
hobby
you in
back
an
then.
office or were you just sending
No,
stuff?
I was up in Michigan, and they're down at
Okay.
Austin,
Okay.
Texas,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
Amarillo,
Right.
Texas.
Amarillo.
So I didn't
Right.
meet them till we all met up at a Gen Con, and I think it had to be 82 maybe.
That's
And I
still
would work
pretty
the booth a
cool.
little bit and that kind of thing because they would just bring people. It'd be like you weren't really working like a job, but be like,
Right.
hey, can you come run the booth for 4 hours with a couple other people? And
You're like, all right.
and I would do that. But yeah,
Huh.
I was with them for several years up until 86 when I joined the Army.
So was that your? Okay, so you worked for Task Force Games. You loved playing Starfleet Battles or other stuff. Da, da, da. If all that hadn't happened, would you be Pacesetter Games today? I mean, was that super formative, or were you doing other gaming too?
It helped me. It was because I met a lot of people. I mean, it was. We wouldn't be Pacesetter oddly enough because of that. Because when we were at Gen Con, I think had to be 84. The Pacesetter formed as a company. A bunch of guys split off from TSR, and Mark Akers kind of led that charge. And I met with them because a couple of the guys at Task Force knew a couple of the guys at Pacesetter, and we went to dinner. And I met these guys, was introduced to them, and became friends with them. I never did any work with the original Pacesetter. I wanted to. I had a couple ideas, but they folded so quick. They were only around like 3 or 4 years. So,
okay.
But they were just a great group of guys, and there was a lot of cross pollination back then. I mean, Jaquays did a lot of stuff for us too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sent the Central Casting book stuff. So,
but I'm sure you've heard that. I mean, she's doing better now, but she's
I know,
some serious health issues.
Very serious.
Evidently, she's doing better now. So
I was very heartened to hear that she's improving for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Okay,
but so anyway, kind of leaning back into that was my connection to it. And our gaming group, once we were hooked on Starfleet Battles. We were a big D&D group, huge D&D group, but we played Starfleet Battles every Sunday for, I want to say 5 years straight. We fought we fought out the entire General War using the original Federation space and then Starfleet Battles to fight out the actual battles. And it took us about 5 years to do it. And it was a blast, and I fond memories of it. And we had a big group. We had like 12 guys, and we pretty much had almost everyone there every Sunday.
That's great.
And we'd pay for like 10, 12 hours. It was nuts.
That's great. So what? Okay, so you were obviously very good at the game. You played it a lot. You were literally writing stuff for scenarios and stuff for the game. Like if at that time when you were playing that much, how would you rank yourself among Starfleet Battles players? Like, would you say you were like, one of the better players out there, or was there? I mean, with that many people playing, I'm assuming.
So I did play in the. I usually played in the patrol tournaments. I played in a few captains tournaments, I guess they were called, the Gen Con and Origins, because I went to those every year. And it was out east, so it had to have been, I think it was in Origins. I wound up, I was in the Final Four. I was flying a Fed, and I went up against 2 Orions, and at that point they were still allowed to use hellbores with other stuff. That I know that rule changed, and I just got
waxed.
I lasted like, I realized I remember distinctly time I got photons off 3 separate times, and I just rolled average or below average.
Were they
Hellbores
overcharged
totally
or
ate
whatever
me
you call
away.
it?
Overloaded, yeah,
Were they overloaded
yeah.
photons?
Yeah, and I just couldn't make a die roll to save my life, and that just slowly got eaten up by the hellbores. But I think I was a rated ace at one time or another.
Cool.
I don't remember all the terms. It was a long time ago. We're talking 80s and 90s, early
Right.
90s.
That's
So I was I think I was a pretty decent player, but there were guys that were just absolutely fantastic. I am not I'm one of those guys. I can remember a lot of rules, but I also got to look a lot of stuff up. Where there are guys who can just rattle the hundreds of pages of Starfleet Battles rules off the top of their head. And like I said, when I say every game plays different, and you can make the smallest error or the smallest good move and change a game completely.
right.
And then, like you said, there's the element of the dice. There's a lot of dice involved in this game, and random stuff happens. So a good players who usually beat bad players, but not all the time.
Right.
Not all the time.
Yeah, I mean the vagaries of. I mean that's just it's a deep tactical.
Yeah.
Stress. So I mean, and in warfare and any other, I mean, it's you could two generals with the same armies in the real life could fight the same battle twice, and it could go different. I mean,
completely
it's just,
ways.
There's nothing certain. So one thing that impressed me that I could tell you played a lot. It was like muscle memory in your brain, and also there was another guy that was obviously a veteran, and both of y'all were like, oh, well, from there at that range with that weapon is like 12% chance to hit. You guys had that just ingrained into you.
I could have believed, because like I said, I had not played in probably 15 years when we played this year at Texas. And it was amazing how fast things.
Oh, no, you could tell that you had that muscle.
Head. Yeah. And there were a couple of guys there who were clearly, there were guys that are still playing today, obviously, and really solid players. And there were a bunch of guys who had never played before. We did have a great group, right?
I felt like that there was, I mean, compared to the experience that was there, I was like, I would put myself in the never having played before because it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I think Noah Green was in that game too.
I think so, yeah.
And him and I were definitely the rookies, but we had fun. But yeah, there was a lot of people showed up. Were you surprised, because you kind of started it as like a seminar in a lecture hall saying, here's how. Were you surprised that many people showed up?
I was, I was expecting, get a handful of people come. It's North Texas RPG Con is an RPG Con, right? I mean, I know we do play BattleTech Friday.
There's a little bit of wargaming, but
there's a little bit.
Yeah.
But Starfleet Battles had never been played. I had been threatening Doug for like 10 years that I was going to run Starfleet Battles, and he's like, "You better not," because he always wanted it to be a role playing game convention,
right?
And I kind of did it in honor of him. I'm like, you know what, Doug, we're playing Starfleet Battles. But I realized there's probably a lot of people out there like me, or a lot of people who'd never played before. And I'm like, let me do an hour seminar beforehand of kind of like intro to Starfleet Battles, right? Here's what the game's all about. Here's how it works in brief. And I paired a lot out of it, obviously, because this game is so massive and expansive. But you can, in an hour and a half, kind of explain it and give people an idea how the game works and how energy allocation works and how your ship works and how you move on the board. And once you know those basic fundamentals of the game, it's just the best way to learn Starfleet Battles is to play Starfleet Battles.
Right.
You're going to get blown up a bunch of times before you kind of get, the little light bulbs start going on, and obviously all the races are different, but it was very well attended. I mean, we had, I don't remember how many people we had in that room. We had quite a few.
I would say there was at least 20, if not more.
I was going to say there had to be around 20 people in there. And I think we had around 8 people actually go upstairs. And I think it was limited to 8 upstairs.
Well, we went up, like 8 of us went upstairs for the quote unquote newbie.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of people that knew how to play already, they split off and just went and had a big shootout. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was great. It was great. Like you said, it was so exciting to see people be interested in it. And, and if I can get people to play Starfleet Battles or give them a taste of it and say, hey, this really is a cool game. And like I said, it is still being produced today.
It's still being Amarillo.
They do a lot of stuff today. They have a whole like in-house miniature company now that they call Shapeways, where they print all your starships up. I mean, what a cool thing. We didn't have that back in the day. I mean, everything was counters back in the day. So now you can play on 1-inch hexes, and there's so much material for it now too. I mean, it's honestly it's kind of overwhelming. But if you stick to the core couple of box sets,
I have the. I just had my box a second ago. I don't know what I did with it. Here it is. I have the Starfleet Battles Captain's Edition.
Captain's Edition. That's the newest version of the game. Yeah,
and you could probably play for a long time off this.
100%.
The average player is probably going to play will only ever probably really need this unless they want more scenarios or something.
Yeah.
But those people who take it to the limit and are hungry for more rules or more ships or something, they do have, other things you can buy for it.
So they have the basic set, which you were holding right there, and then they have one called Advanced Missions, which is it's the expansion of the game, and that's those two box sets are pretty much the core game.
Yeah,
and then there's a slew of modules you can buy for it, which include new races, more ships for the existing races, just so much more stuff. All these races have got a million different ships now. From little tiny frigates or police corvettes all the way up to giant battleships, and
these dreadnoughts.
But like you said, you can get the Captain's Edition basic game, and you've really got pretty much all.
It's going to take you a while to exhaust that. I mean,
it really is. But like I said, I think if you play the game a few times, you get the bug, and you start wanting to see all the new stuff. I mean, I remember our group, every time Task Force came out with something new for Starfleet Battles, it was a must-buy the day it came out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're that deep,
you couldn't wait to see what they were doing next, right?
Right. So, I mean, if you're playing every week for 12 hours a day, then you want you want all the newest. So I want to roll it back just a little bit, and it was actually you said something again that I had made note of that surprised me when we were at North Texas RPG Con, and you were running, your intro kind of like, hey, here's how to play. And before I forget to say, I'm glad you did that. One of the reasons I'm doing this show, one of the reasons I'm trying to I thought about running Starfleet Battles at North Texas. I really feel, like you said, Amarillo Design Bureau is still putting out new stuff.
Yeah.
They have an active social media presence. They're like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that.
There's a lot of active groups. You could search Facebook Starfleet Battles Cincinnati, and you're going to find a Cincinnati group or whatever, right?
Well, I feel like that, especially with, tabletop gaming, not just role playing, but tabletop gaming, wargaming is in a bit of a upward swell right now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that if conventions and local groups started doing more Starfleet Battles, I feel like it might take off a little bit again.
I think specifically if they came back and started running the big tournaments that they used to run, right? Steve Cole is not going to be showing up at game conventions anymore. Steve's got to be in his late 60s, early 70s at this point. So you would need a staff to come do that. And obviously Task Force doesn't exist anymore. So I agree with you. I think if you would show up at a couple big conventions like a Gen Con or an Origins and run a big tournament, I do think you would get a lot of people. I mean, at Gen Con, oh my God, we had a whole wing that Gen Con gave us to run Starfleet Battles. And by wing, I mean an area the size of, a gymnasium, right?
Yeah,
dozens and dozens and dozens of tables, and we had a headquarters, tables up there, and
that sounds fun.
It was nuts.
Yeah, that sounds
all
fun.
convention long. By the way, this wasn't run like Saturday. From the tournament started Thursday and ended Sunday. I mean, it was a real thing.
But getting back, kind of rolling it back, you said something. I made a note of it mentally that night when we were playing in June or late May, whenever it was. And then you repeated it again, pretty much. You said something like a lot of Starfleet Battles players could care less about Star Trek or Trek. And that really surprised me because to me, it's like I've never thought of it. I don't know. As a war gamer, I guess what you're saying is it's just such a good war game that a lot of people play. Like, I don't care that it's got Federation. It's just a good war game.
Right. It's a brilliant game. I mean, forget the IP wrapped around it. It's just simply a brilliant game. But so I don't want to. I probably say that a little bit wrong. It's not that they don't care necessarily about Star Trek, but it's not what drives them to play Starfleet battles, because the IP is so minimal, right? And actually, I mean, way back in the day, we would get literally Trekkies that would come to play at Gen Con or Origins, and when they found out what it was, would literally turn around and walk away. I mean, I witnessed it dozens of times, because it's not a Trekkie game. It's got nothing to do with that, and or virtually nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's a tactical war game, and the two aren't necessarily aligned, right? I mean, if you are a Trekkie, and I don't know because I'm not one, but I think if you're a Trekkie, they were more apt to play FASA's Star Trek role-playing game, or even they had a tactical.
It was Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock tactical combat game or something like that.
But
it was a very. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there'd be a little more allure to that versus Starfleet Battles, because Starfleet Battles does other than it's in the name, it's just never talked about. I mean, it's just
right.
We didn't talk about it in-house. So
there's slight. I mean, just so that people know, like, there's very slight flavor. Like,
yeah.
There's a scenario where you might run into a giant amoeba.
Right. And like they had the rights to do stuff from the original series,
right,
and from the animated show. Everything else is off limits. So you're never going to find like in anything past literally the first movie, all of a sudden Klingons are flying around in Romulan warbirds cloaking all the time. That does not exist in Starfleet battles.
Right.
Klingons are Klingons and Romulans are Romulans. They don't. You don't have. They're not shooting photon torpedoes. I mean, Klingons use this weapon called a disruptor, and it's a totally different weapon system. Works differently. Everything about it's different, and it's so if you're trying to mimic, if you watch the modern Star Trek movies and you want to mimic, you think that's going to mimic in Starfleet battles?
No, it's not going to.
You're really going to be disappointed because it's nothing like that.
There is sort of, though. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was that, so they basically the Starfleet universe, which Starfleet Battles is part of, or which the Starfleet universe came out of Starfleet Battles. There is a role-playing game. There's some other games. There's actually a computer game called. What is it? Fleet Command or something like that. Starfleet Command.
Starfleet Command. Yeah. And
it's an adaptation, a real-time sort of adaptation of Starfleet Battles, which I feel like Starfleet Battles works better as a turn-based, very meticulous. Yeah. But if you just kind of want to get a little bit of, go check out Starfleet Command. So there was kind of a world that grew out of it. There's I'm going to the Starfleet Games website. There's Starfleet Battle Force. There's Federation Commander. Yep. There's a role-playing game. There's a game called Federation and Empire. Starfleet Marines. All this stuff kind of came out of it. But Starfleet Battles itself, like you said, it's a tactical war game. And you're in a Federation dreadnought or a Federation cruiser or a Klingon this or that. And I mean, you can say, hey, this is a Federation ship versus a Klingon ship, but there's no Captain Kirk. There's no, I don't do it. Pure Starfleet battles, like the ships don't gain experience or anything, right? Yeah. I mean, so it's a war game, but it does have this nice nostalgic, pre-next generation sort of quasi Star Trek feel. Right, because it's kind of like you take what it was in 1979, you take the original series, you take the animated series, parts of that, and you build sort of a parallel universe out of that, and that's kind of what's going on here. So
I mean, the ships aren't even named. I mean, you can name them, and they
say like Dreadnought, or
the game has a name registry, but nobody ever uses I mean, virtually no one ever uses any of that. But like, if you were to sit down and just say, okay, two of you are going to play Starfleet battles tonight, and someone's going to take a Federation heavy cruiser, someone's going to take a Klingon D7, which is their heavy cruiser, and you're going to battle out. You're not taking the Enterprise versus the whatever. It's just you're taking a heavy cruiser, and that's how little IP flavor. Other than you look at your SSD, which is the diagram of the ship with all its internal systems blocked in block format. So when you take damage, you just start checking off blocks. BattleTech is kind of borrowed that from Starfleet battles. I was
going to ask you, how heavy influence does Starfleet battles have on BattleTech, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know BattleTech's complete history. I'm not that well versed in it. It all came out right around the same time, but I know Starfleet battles is definitely before BattleTech, and so, but BattleTech uses the same kind of concept, right? You have this mech, and you have a bunch of circles on it, and every time you take damage, you start checking circles off until a system is completely destroyed, or damage goes to other places and does other things. Starfleet battles is the same way. If you have a ship and you punch through its shields and you do like 20 damage, you're going to start marking off hull boxes and weapon boxes. You roll on a random chart. For those of you who don't play the game, it's called a DAC, damage allocation chart. Yeah, and you're just going to start rolling 2d6, and it's going to say, okay, right warp engine hit. You mark off a right warp engine box. Now you have one less power for next turn. You're going to lose a phaser. You could lose hull. You can lose shuttle boxes. You can lose. There's a whole slew of stuff that's inside these ships. And as these boxes degrade, the ship has less ability.
Well, and that's also how the same scenario can play out wildly different. Because even when we played, I was like, oh, I'm in for at least another round because you didn't take out my power generation. Yeah. Whereas the other guy next to me lost all of his engines, so he was dead. I lost like a sensor or something. And so that's another way that it can play very different. And another thing I want to give credit to Starfleet battles. The whole thing is done on 2d6.
Yes.
Everything. And you can get a wide range of tactical this and that just using 2d6s.
You're never going to, 2d6 is what you use. 2d or 1d6 is used to resolve everything.
Right.
Almost everything. It's either 1d6 or 2d. 2d6 is usually if you have to make a actual hit roll that if you hit or miss. Some weapons hit automatically, just do X number of damage based on the range, and you're a 1d6. Other weapons like a photon torpedo, you look at the range. You have a range chart. Say, okay, I'm 20 hexes away. I got to roll, a 1 through 2 on 1d6, for example. 2d6 is typically the damage allocation chart. Hellbores use it to hit rolls. The Hydran race, and other weapons don't do that at all. They're called seeking weapons. You fire them and they track on the board like a missile.
I hate drones. That's one thing I don't like. I hate to be on the other end of a drone.
Yeah, then there's plasma torpedoes, which if you watch the original series show, work just like that. If you watch that classic episode where that Romulan warbird is invisible or cloaked,
Balance of Terror.
Yes, and it's fighting the Enterprise, and it launches a plasma torpedo, and the Enterprise is trying to get away from it, but it still gets hit by it and takes a bunch of damage. Right. And says, "Holy shit! If we get hit by that one more time, we're toast." That's in the game.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is in the game, but it's not. You're not going to be Captain Stax commanding his crew, and and then the next scenario is Captain Stax has survived and his crew is gained. It's right. So you get ships that feel very Star Trek. Some of the weapons feel some stuff feels exotic though, because they had to come up with stuff.
Oh, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they were like, hey, we need more factions. So they were, the Kzinti and this and that. Yeah. The Gorn. Like here's what Task Force Games had to do, or really Amarillo Design Bureau being published by Task Force Games. Hey, we can use the Gorn. Well, what the heck are the Gorn? All we know is it was a lizard dude running around on the planet. So they had to come up with ships. And they do have some flavor. Like they'll say the Gorn breathes chlorine or there's something. They'll have this
the names of,
stuff.
the names of the ships, like, the pterodactyl or whatever.
Yeah.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, so that the ships are kind of named that way. Like,
Yeah. I mean, so there is some flavor, but the whole point is
some,
let's get the ships on the board and
it's
start fighting. Yeah.
it's purely all of it is ancillary to the game.
Right.
It's just like you said, it's a flavor. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with that when you sit down at the table and start plotting your movement and rolling your dice. It's got zero to do with any of that. The fact that you're a Gorn doesn't make a ton of difference than if you're
it doesn't
another
mean
race, except your weapons are somewhat different, right?
Right.
It's
Right. Yeah.
really,
It's just that's your faction. And
yeah.
So, but if you love
Design
Gorns,
differences to make them unique.
right.
And I mean, there's Stolians in the game. They produce just like the
web.
episode where the Enterprise gets caught in a Tholian web. Tholians can have web generators on their ship.
Well, my cat is trying to join the conversation. Let me close the door.
So it's for those of you interested in the game, there is a way to play it out. Actually, it was kind of interesting. We're talking about this guy. Just was on one of my Facebook things, and I'm not on Facebook a lot, but one of the Starfleet Battles Facebook pages, someone was asking, "Hey, my group's really interested. What's a good way for us to get into this game? I really want to play." There's a book called it used to be called the Cadet Training Manual.
And it's free. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's been renamed at this point, but that's the one I'm familiar with. And what that is basically an introductory, kind of what I ran at North TX. You strip a lot of the rules out of the game and you just play movement, fire, a couple seeking weapons, and you keep it really simple so people can get the gist of it. And it's a really easy way to learn the game. And then you just move, I would say get the basics box set that you showed at the same time.
Right.
Play a couple cadet games, and then you step right into that, into Starfleet Battles. And the best way to do it is just get out there and play and get blown up. I mean, it's just the best possible way to play.
And there are people out there playing, by email or by forum or whatever.
Starfleet Battles Online is huge. It's called SBOL, I believe. Yeah. I think it's still a big. You could go on there right now and say, "Hey, I'll find an opponent," and you both basically will. I think it's all done virtually now, where you're
I'm not
on
sure.
your laptop.
I know they do have an online version, but I'm not familiar.
And a lot of people
with it.
A lot of people do play that. I'm not that familiar with it, unfortunately, but and if you can find the right people to play with, they can. They're going to teach you how to play the game, and there's a. Hopefully, you're not going to run into that guy who is. His interest is just I'm going to crush any look at the newbie. I'm going to blow him into a million smithereens and show him how cool I am. Hopefully, look, you can find that in any kind of game, but there's plenty of really, really good, nice. It's a great community. Starfleet Battles has an amazing community of people, and I think those are few and far in between. But there is a lot out there for it, and I do think, like you said, Shane, I do think the game has definitely made a comeback in the last 5 years for sure.
I think it could even. I think the timing is right. That if things went a certain way, I think it could have more of it. Because there's a lot more people wargaming now. It looks like.
Well, the staying power of that game, right? You can't deny it. It's been around for 40 years. I mean, it just. You can't deny.
Isn't that crazy?
Success, right? And the reason it's successful because it really is a fun game. You're not going to sit down and play Starfleet Battles in 2 hours. I will warn people that right now.
It's not.
You're going to play for 3 to 5 hours most likely. So there's some expectations you just have to understand. It can be complex, but it's complex in the funnest way possible.
Right.
Because you're always doing something. By the way, you're not sitting there bored out of your mind for 20 minutes at a time. It's not that kind of game. You're always moving. You're acting almost constantly. It's like you move your ship, I move my ship. You move your ship, I move my ship. And it's fast paced yet slow enough, like you said, turn based that
that's what I want.
Keeps you engaged the whole time, I should say.
I prefer turn-based where I can get it. I want to, especially for a game like that when it's that heavily tactical. That's why I think that, Starfleet Command, the computer game we were talking about, it's a nice adaptation, but it's nowhere near the same experience because it's all happening in real time. And, it's not the same experience. But you were talking about the cadet training manual. So people can go to shaneplays.com and check the show notes for this episode, or just go to starfleetgames.com and go to the Starfleet Battles. They still have the Cadet Training Manual, and that's still what they call it, for free. Cadet Training Manual, which is they have the actual training manual, and then they have another PDF file with the counters. So they even let you print out the counters and try things out. So yeah, definitely go check that out. One thing I wanted to ask you, you probably got insight on this, especially having worked with task force games and et cetera, et cetera. How is it that Amarillo Design Bureau and Task Force, how have they kept the license? Was it a perpetual license? How have they kept the license this long?
So I believe it's with Paramount, because I believe Paramount
It's true. Yeah, it's Paramount.
Star Trek, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they screwed up. And I bet to this day they are kicking themselves because they sold a perpetual license for Infinity to use stuff from the original series and
the animated series.
But you are correct. They cannot use names. They can't use characters. They're not allowed to do any of that.
I don't even think they're allowed. I don't think they're allowed to say Enterprise. I could be wrong.
No, they can't use any proper names, I believe.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So, other than Federation, Klingon, Kazini, that kind of thing. But it's it's all in the legalese, but they will have that forever. There is no limit on it. So you can absolutely believe that Paramount, because especially the way these companies are today with licensing IP, they're nuts. So it was a coup for sure. And but like I said, we don't get too caught up in it, because if you buy Starfleet Battles expecting to play Starfleet or Star Trek
battles,
you're not gonna. It's not what it is. You're not gonna have a fire one torpedo and blow up a Klingon ship because whatever like they do in the movies. It's not how it works at all. So
right, exactly. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a deep tactical.
Yeah,
and I mean it's one of those games where you really don't want to come out guns blazing. You want to be very choosy about.
Yeah, you got to be methodical. And
right.
Most ships can take a hit, or they can absorb some damage before they're really in a lot of trouble. So you can make a mistake and get blasted and still be okay. I mean, there's a lot of forgiveness in the game to a certain extent. I mean, you can really get walloped, believe me. But that's part of the learning curve. Learning what your ship can do and what the other guy's ship can do is very important.
Well, I guess like the natural inclination, if you're brand new, is you see the opponent on the other side of the board and you want to make a beeline and start
go straight at them, right?
And you don't. I mean, after a while, you'll learn. You got to kind of maneuver and think about it a little bit.
Yeah, and some races never want to do that at all, and some of the races are hell bent for leather. That's all they want to do, right? And that creates that just great tactical flavor of the game where your opponent's trying to do one thing, you're trying to do another, but you are going to meet in the middle at some point.
You are eventually going to it's eventually going to get
eventually
nasty.
You're going to get there. You're all just going to get, sooner or later it's going to be a slugfest, but it's trying to get the advantage before you dive into that slugfest.
Like a real military situation.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to mention. We've been going about an hour now, so want to draw us up here in a little bit, but a couple of things I want to mention, kind of give a shout out to stuff that I think is cool. We mentioned, I would say that the two core rules, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but once you get your head around energy allocation and the phase, the movement phase, once you get your head around that, I would say that's a big part of, it's a big part of it.
50% plus of the game. Once you figure out how the basic mechanics of the game and like you said, the energy allocation, and how your ship works in concert with how you're spending energy to do what you want with your ship, you've got the game down at that point. Everything else after that is just learning the million different nuances that part of the game.
Well, the other thing that you said a lot during that intro night was speed is life.
Speed is life.
Yeah.
Yes. So Starfleet Battles is a game where your ship has every turn. Again, we'll kind of go back to teaching here. Every turn of Starfleet Battles is broken down into what's called impulses. So there's 32 impulses in every turn. The maximum speed any ship can go is 32. Okay, actually 31 technically. So a plasma torpedo goes speed 32. Most things go significantly slower. So your ship has energy points based on how many engines it has and that kind of thing. And you have to use all those energy points to power your weapons, put your shields up.
Life support.
Minimal. Those are, you're right. Those are minimal. They're there.
Yeah.
They're minimal, but most of your energy is going to go into your weapons and your speed. You can never, most ships, vast majority, if they're charging their weapons, aren't going to go anywhere near speed 31. Okay, they just can't. They don't have them. They don't have enough to do that.
Yeah, it's balancing
to go. Right?
You want to be as fast as possible,
but you want to be as fast as possible. And
right,
as you learn the game, because the inclination is not to go fast. The inclination is to go slow
and build
power your weapons up, put extra power into your shields because you can do that. So you can take a punch. The problem is maneuverability in this game. You will learn really quickly. Maneuverability is we keep saying it's a tactical game. That's a major portion of the tactical thing. So for new players out there,
that's how you gain advantage.
That's how you gain advantage.
From gaining advantage on you is high movement.
So for new players out there, the thing to remember: speed kills. It's the thing you will. If I were doing this all over again, you would hear that from me 10 times during a seminar. Speed kills. Usually the guy that dictates movement, because if you're faster than your opponent, you are going to dictate movement on the board, because you're going to determine, you're going to force him to react. He's going to have to react to you.
This is played on a hex map.
Yes, played on a hex map. So you can your speed will allow you to take advantage of your weapon ranges as opposed to his weapon disadvantages at ranges. Speed will do it all, and invariably high speed is almost always going to beat anyone going slow. It's really hard to win moving slow. So speed kills, guys. That's my number one lesson for all you new guys out there is keep your speed up, because the last thing you want to do, especially if you're going against, there's races out there who use what's called seeking weapons. And those are missiles, drones.
I hate them, man.
Hate them. Nobody really. Most people, it's a really crazy thing. I can't stand them either. So it's people are really on one side. Very few people sit on that fence. They're on one side or the other. They hate them or they love them.
Well, I mean, I hate to be on the receiving end of them.
Everyone hates being receiving end.
Because you're wasting all your firepower trying to shoot them down,
trying to knock them down. And if one does happen to get through, they do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a freebie for the guy shooting it, because he has the secret weapons drones don't require any energy from the ship using them. They just fire them.
Right. They just fire them and off they go. And they move on in movement phase. And,
they track the guy down. So drones have various speeds, and especially early versions of the game, your drone's going to go pretty slow. They're going to go like speed 8 or speed 12, maybe speed 20, and if you can keep your speed up, you can stay away from them and neutralize them.
I mean, it's basically they're called drones, but they're basically missiles.
They're missiles.
They're basically heat-seeking missiles coming after you.
Yeah.
Those in the hellbore scare me. They give me.
The hellbore is the magic weapon in Starfleet. I hated it when it came out.
Doesn't it eat up all your shields all the way around or something like that?
Yeah. So we're talking a speed and tactical movement. It's played on a hex board. Your ship has got 6 different shields on it, one at each facing. Okay. So imagine yourself in a hex. Facing forward, you've got 6 sides on your hex. Each side there's a shield there that can absorb so much damage before it's boxes again. If a shield takes 20 damage, you're going to mark off 20 boxes. If it doesn't have 20 boxes, the remainder is going to go inside and do damage to the actual ship. Once that shield is down, it's pretty much gone forever. Without getting into minutia how you can
there's additional rules about
there's additional rules on how to repair, but you're never getting it back to 20. You're getting it back to 1 or 2. So so every weapon in the game, it's facing, right? My ship is here, your ship is there. I'm hitting you on you just look at, line it up. I'm hitting you on the number 4 shield. Okay. So every weapon you fire hits the number 4 shield. That's the straight line from your ship to his ship. Okay. For example, the hellbore is a magic weapon where he fires it. If he hits your ship, half the damage of the hellbore magically works its way around your ship, and it does damage to the weakest shield on the ship, which may not be the one he's facing. So if he damaged a shield earlier in the game, which is what they try to do,
right?
They try to damage a shield, come around again later, and then fire again, and half their damage. I've always hated it because you do not have to be a tactical genius to run a hellbore on ship,
right?
Most
like
guys
a shotgun.
Maneuver back around to get to that weak shield, right? I mean,
right?
You do a flyby, you fire at each other, and you damage some shields up. The next time around, you're trying to maneuver using your speed again to get to that weaker shield that you can pound it again. So there's all kinds of fun tactics going on there. The Hydras don't have to do any of that. They just show up to the party and start rolling dice, and you start getting hammered. And they by the way, they do a lot of damage.
Yeah, no, they gives me.
Not only is it got this magic power, it does a lot of.
I'm getting stressed out thinking about probes and hellbores right now, man.
It irritates you just talking about them. By the way, they are the only race in the entire game that does that.
Right. And I think we made this point, but just in case people didn't get it, Federation doesn't use hellbores. Federation doesn't use plasma. They all have their own.
Yeah. So a lot of the weapons are distinct, right? Now some of them share, like Kazinis, Lyrans, Tholians. I think I say Klingons, right? They use disruptors. That's their torpedo of choice. They can fire those every turn. They do a little bit of damage. The Federation uses the
phaser and photon torpedo.
Phaser. Oh, everyone has phasers. Everyone in the game has phasers, but Federation they have the classic photon torpedo, right? But they can only fire those every other turn because it takes 2 turns to charge them up. But they do significantly more damage.
And you can overcharge them.
And you can overload. You can overload disruptors too. But overloaded photons do a hell of a lot of damage. The plasma races are the Gorn and the Romulan. There's other races too we're not going to talk about.
And then the Tholians have the web. And
Tholians have the web and web casters. They can actually shoot you with it. And then the Hydrans have the hellbores and fusion beams. They have 2 weird weapons. So there's actually fighters in the game, which we even talk about.
Right, you got fighters. You got
called pseudo fighters or PFs.
You have carriers, right? Don't you have carriers that have fighters?
Most races have carriers which carry fighters, and fighters. They're a love-hate thing too. You get sometimes people who absolutely love them, and other people just can't stand them. But
for me, it's like I have limited. I love strategy games and I love tactical strategy games. But for my personal play style, it hurts my brain to want to keep up with the fighters, right? I'm like, now I got to keep up with this. So
fighters is when the game starts. You really should know how to play Starfleet battles very, very well. And fighters add a whole other dimension and component to the game, and just a lot more time and complexity. And it can be a lot of fun, but it can also be a drag sometimes. So it's kind of like, are you guys in the mood to run fighters tonight? Yeah, let's fighters are cool. Fighters, sure thing. And then other nights you're like, no, nobody's getting a ship with fighters. So you just don't want to deal with it.
Right. And then of course the ships also have their own unique flavor. Like some races tend to have more hull and more shields or less, so some ships are tougher.
Tons of shields. Klingons are very weak around the back with shields. Yes. And but Klingons have, for example, all the ships have transporters, like transporter beam, right? Klingons, their heavy cruisers got 7 of them on a ship. And what they like to do is try and knock a shield down. They can use their 7 transporters to beam 7 boarding parties onto your ship and start attacking systems. So versus other races might only have 2 or 3 transporters.
That stuff was so. Take it back to the beginning of the episode when I said I was watching these young airmen. On Little Rock Air Force Base play this at the, rec center or whatever. And I'm sure I was that annoying little kid asking a bunch of questions. They were like, I wish this kid would shut up. But I was like, just, what is that? What is it? Da, da, da. And that stuff, I was like, oh, because you never see that in the show. So this stuff exists. It just like whoever made this game has all kinds of insight to the Star Trek universe that you never see on the show. Like they had boarding parties. They have transporter bombs. You can transport a bomb over. They have these wild weasel shuttles that.
So we didn't even get into the whole electronic warfare. Our group hated it, so it's something we always veered away from. It's not allowed. It was never allowed in the tournaments. So like the competition tournaments, because it's honestly, guys, it's very off-putting. If some people, again, this is one of those love-hate things, but the love portion of people who like electronic warfare are like 10 to 20%, and 80% of the people can't stand it, because all it does is you can spend power, and it makes firing at another ship, you all of a sudden take penalties to your dice rolls.
Right, because you're like screwing with their sensors.
Yeah, all of a sudden you can never hit anybody, and it just drags out the game, and it gets long.
Well, there's a certain player who that will appeal to their play style, but most don't.
Most people don't want anything to do with it, because then you could have, it's called ECM, it's called electronic countermeasures. So you could do it, and then there's a thing called ECCM, electronic
counter.
Right, you could put power in to negate his countermeasures, so it just gets.
And like I said, if you got two people that are into that, go for it.
Super into it, yeah. You could, if you want to play every rule in the game, go for it. But it's kind of like the old speed factor in first edition AD&D. Nobody
uses it unless you're just. Every now and then I'll run a game and say, hey, we're going to use this just to see what it would have felt like. But nobody, just for the experience of knowing what that rule really plays like. But I would never say we're going to do that every time we play or anything like that.
Kind of thinking about this whole thing of I know we go back to the Star Trek Starfleet Battles thing. The thing about Starfleet Battles, it is it's a tactical war. It is a combat game. You have a ship, he has a ship. You're out there to blow each other up. There isn't a whole lot of doing anything else. You're not talking to other people.
Well, you're not scanning asteroids to see if there's
sensors and doing all kinds of crazy ass.
You're not rescuing alien civilizations. No, you're blowing each other up.
The mission is to blow each other up. It's really that simple.
Well, and there are a few weird
scenarios you can do different things.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't call it this, but there is the scenario with the Doomsday Machine from that classic, the big, looks like a cornucopia. They don't call it that. So you could do that, but really it's about two people trying to blow it's about two or more people wanting to blow wanting to achieve space superiority. So, and one other question I have for you, and then we'll wrap it up. Have you ever played this version? It's
I have not played version.
It plays okay. So what I'm holding in my hand right now is it's called Star Trek Battle Force. I actually bought this at NTX. I can't remember which vendor. And it's a card-based version of Starfleet Battles. And it feels surprisingly like Starfleet Battles, but of course it's not the same tactical experience. But what made me think of this was this has the ECM and the ECCM in it, if you want to use it. So
another cool version of the game is called Federation Commander, and I believe they still make it. And it's Starfleet Battles, but it's a simplified version, and simple is not the right word because it's still every bit is tactically complex, but it takes a lot of those crazy role systems out of there, and it's just it gets down to
they still have it
more. And it's a great version. They've got some great products out for it, especially, and all this stuff is available through Emerald Design Bureau. You can go on their website, or obviously, honestly, eBay is not a bad choice for Starfleet Battles. It's not terribly expensive to buy stuff. The only thing, like I said, is you really need to be careful because there are 4 different editions of Starfleet Battles. I mean, the pocket game is the pocket game. If you even find one on eBay, it's going to cost you a fortune most likely because they're kind of rare, especially if it's complete and unpunched. It's a collector's item. The pocket version is a collector's item. The next one is called the Designer's Edition. And that box set looks it's the same cover art as the pocket game. And that had expansions 1, 2, and 3. And that was the complete game. But then there's the Commander's Edition, which was out for a very long time, which has a ton of product for it, a lot of product for Commander's Edition, and then they came out with the Captain's Edition, which is the version now.
That's what I would probably recommend.
So I would absolutely recommend get the Captain's Edition and try and get Captain's Edition. You can, again, everything on Amarillo Design Bureau website is going to point you in the right direction to get all this stuff. They have it all in PDF. They just don't sell all of it in like physical format all the time. So if you
can get the Captain's Edition in physical format.
Yeah, you can get that.
That's where I got mine.
You want like module R6 or something like that. It may or may not be in stock. It's most likely a lot of stuff's out of stock. So you're gonna have to go to eBay to find it. But you're not gonna pay like when we say eBay prices for stuff. You can easily find the stuff.
Yeah, mine was, let's see, the Captain's Basic Edition set was not that expensive.
No.
Let me see here. I can look right now and tell you. The basic set is $50, and that's everything you play. I mean, counters, dice, maps, books. It's a big, thick box. I mean, it's a big, thick box. And then they have the Captain's Edition and Advanced Missions, etc.
Advanced Missions, it's just going to add more ships and some more races. But it really is advantageous to have both of them, I think. They really complement each other real well.
What is Federation and Empire?
So Federation Empire is Starfleet Battles universe, their universe, but it is a campaign game. So you're not
okay.
It's you're not fighting ship to ship. It's fleets against fleets, and it's die roll resolution.
And the campaigns carry over. Like we're trying to win the war.
This is you're fighting the war, but it's a campaign game. It doesn't use Starfleet Battles rules. Okay. It's set in the universe, but not the rules.
Then they have a ground combat game called Starfleet Marines.
I don't think anyone plays that. I don't know.
They have Star Armada. I'm not sure what.
It's been around forever. We didn't play it back in the day. Yeah. They have a role-playing game called Prime Directive. I don't know if they even still make anything for it.
They do. Here it is. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's not good, people. It's interesting. If you want to read some classic old stuff put out in the 90s.
Well, see, that's one of the reasons I like to go to cons, or I like to run one shots. I like to take that and say, I want to play one adventure in this and see what it feels like. And
you absolutely could. There's Prime Directive has got 3 or 4 or 5 modules for it.
They've also got a GURPS version of it, so they got their own version. And
okay. I'm not even familiar with it. I'm familiar with the original Prime Directive. So it had a rule book, and we task force 3 or 4 modules, I think. Maybe 5 tops. It was not a lot. Maybe 1 supplement book.
And they also have a Call to Arms Starfleet, which is
I know the name, but I'm not familiar with it at all.
It's a hexless miniatures based game. So it's a whole different thing. So they're just, offering all these different options, but the sun that all the other planets orbit around in the Starfleet universe is Starfleet Battles.
It's the monster in the room for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's man, I appreciate it. This makes me want to play again. So
I know it does. Hopefully you run it at Texas, and if it's it's a free spot for me, I'm in. I'll tell you right now, but.
All right.
I have to always hedge it in the fact that at Texas,
you're busy. Yeah, you're super busy
at Texas.
I might run it, but I'm going to have to be like, look, this is cadet rules. We're very limited.
100%. I would absolutely run the simplified version.
Yeah. And then, if veterans come in, I'll be like, look, this is probably, please be nice to us.
And I would pull them aside because, honestly, when I did we ran the game upstairs. We had a guy who was like a headhunter, and I don't want to call anyone out or anything like that. But he was flexing his Starfleet Battles prowess against people.
Yeah, he probably should have been in the shootout.
And I just like, no, we're just not going to do that. You don't want to, because you want to make it fun for people, right? You want people to enjoy it.
You were trying to teach it. And it's like, hey, I can't learn anything when I'm being completely owned by round 2. So, but one thing that was said during that, every now and then you and somebody else would kind of debate the rules. And somebody said SFB also stands for Starfleet Bickering. And I thought that was kind of funny. So
sure.
Starfleet Bickering. So anyway.
Like I said, people use some rules and people don't use other ones, right? I mean, even in that thing, he tried to pull out some obscure rule about, you can't fire heavy weapons at a drone or whatever. It's like, nobody uses that. I've never seen anyone in the universe ever use that rule. And it's not even an actual rule; it's a modification system chart or whatever.
Something.
But
you're like, I think you're like, look, this is
we're just playing to have fun here, right?
Yeah, we're having fun.
Yeah.
Well, you were even like talking to people like, look, for your energy allocation, do this, do that. It was like, let's learn and have fun. So, and speaking of fun, man, it's been fun having you on. This totally makes me want to play some more Starfleet battles. But yeah, I think that it's poised to maybe get a little bit more traction these days, hopefully. Like you said, they've been around for 40 years, so I'd love to see them keep going. And it is a good game. It's a fun game. I do, that I always end the each episode with bad jokes. Bad joke of the week, even though I don't do a weekly show anymore, it still has a nice ring to it. So it's the bad joke of the week. Let me make sure I didn't forget to ask any questions. I think we covered everything. Okay. I know Starfleet Battles is not technically, it's not a full-on Star Trek game, but I had to define Star Trek bad jokes. So here we go. How do you stop from falling out of a bird of prey in Star Trek?
No idea.
You just have to cling on.
There it is.
There it is. I got another one. Here we go.
All right, I need to hear it.
All right. If Mr. Spock has pointed ears, what does Mr. Scott have?
I don't know.
Engineers. Yes, engineers.
You're killing me, Shane.
You did sign the waiver, so you can't sue me. All right. And finally, why did the Klingon cross the road?
Because he wanted to.
Well, that too, but to get to the other battle. Nice. That's why the Klingon crossed the road. All right. Thanks again, Bill. Mr. Bill Barsh of Pacesetter Games and Simulation. Shoot me the link and all that on your Kickstarter when it goes in January for that wilderness exploration. Yeah. And I will definitely help promote it. And we'll have you back on. When you start doing something with that adventure, the Palace of the Vampire Queen, let me know, because I'll have you back on to talk about that. That is an important piece of D&D history.
We feel that way, and like I said, we're very we're blessed to be able to do it. We're very humble about it, and it is it's a privilege for us, and we take it as also a very large responsibility. Right? It's we call her the Queen because she is the Queen, and she deserves her day for sure. That
is cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to talking about that. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks again, Bill, and everybody else. We will catch you next time on Shane Plays. Thanks so much for listening to Shane Plays Geek Talk. I certainly hope you enjoyed this journey into the things we love. For your convenience, show notes with helpful links for each episode can always be found at shaneplays.com. You can catch the podcast in several places, including on the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, Amazon Music, Verbal, YouTube, and more. If you like what you hear and would like to support Shane Plays Geek Talk, you can do so for as little as $1 per episode on Patreon at patreon.com/ShanePlays. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Stay geeky, my friends.